This video is brought to you by the lovely guys over at RoboToys. For all your Hasbro, Takara, third-party and knockoff desires, RoboToys has you covered. For 10% off, use the code DrLock 10% off at the checkout. Now on to today's diagnosis.
Read the disclaimer! On the other one, you bastard! What are you doing?
Just working on my Nicee review.
What? Big Firebird Nicee? You're kidding, right?
Nope.
I think you're forgetting they just banned Schmentai in Australia, so that might be a problem.
Nope.
Aren't you worried you'll get arrested?
This is a Transformers channel.
Here, let me set up a barrier. That'll stop anyone from infiltrating the house.
Don't.
No, don't worry. It'll only take a second. How are you going to it? I've opened a portal to hell by mistake.
Didn't tell you not to.
Christ, what have I done?
Hey, Quartz. RC is one of those characters that gets lots of figures, but none of them have truly hit the nail on the head. Many of them come close, but each RC has their own quirk to them.
Be it mediocre backpacks or weird proportions, very few RCs, either official or third party, really manage to hit the nail on the head. But now, we have a solution. Schmentai.
I can't say I'm into off-brand anime that much, but there are elements of the design that do intrigue me, and I mean so in a traditional engineering sense. So, is it worth it? Well, greetings Cybertronians, I'm DrLockdown.
And I'm Quartz Roolz.
And today's diagnosis pertains to Big Firebird EX01 Nicee, also known as Horny as RC. Are you sure you don't want a cup of tea?
Nah, my hands don't work.
The anime community is privy to a lot of horny anime figures, and by god I mean a lot. Everything from your traditional harem figurines to whatever frame arms girls are supposed to be, to even Fire Emblem characters. Ooh, Nintendo getting spicy! The otaku and weeb communities don't seem to understand how a simple Google search works, and instead constantly desire overpriced risque figures, with the added bonus of ruining any social life they may have gotten otherwise.
Hey, I've made some of those financially questionable purchases in the past, but in any case, figures of this kind are common, but sadly not something you would expect to see of Transformers characters outside of maybe Black Arachnia. And yet, in the early months of 2019, a new challenger appeared on the horizon, a new group within the third-party world, bringing a revolutionary idea. A Transformer with memories.
Right, except for IDW Windblade, and Chromia, and the aforementioned Black Arachnia, and Thunderblast.
Oh my god, I never saw that before. My youth is a lie.
Your memories are in danger! To save them and the... Yeah, that joke got old fast. Anyway, predictably, the community didn't actually get very controversial over this. Wait, what? A sexy design and people didn't get mad? What on earth could have happened? Oh, right, it was quickly eclipsed by Flames Toys Windblade. Got it. Anyway, neither of us are typically concerned with the, voluptuous aspects of this figure. We're more interested in the engineering side of things.
Sure, yeah.
And whilst it's clear the robot mode is the main focus of the design, ironically I find the vehicle mode more intriguing.
While the design of the car mode is inherently echoing the design cues of the traditional RC musky and beauty car, it is also decidedly doing its own thing, with the sweeping shapes of the front replacing the rather boxy aesthetic of the 86 movie. The whole thing really accentuates the lines and supple curves of the vehicle. Wait, no, please, no, not like that, I swear. I don't cars, Jesus
Well, you certainly aren't a member of bot posting. If I had to describe the aesthetic, I'd say it looks like something that you would see out of the anime film Harmony, except that film was dog shit and this car mode decidedly isn't. It's also been described by many of the members of the community as being not too dissimilar from Depth Charge, and I kinda see it. It certainly has an aquatic tinge to it, which does wonders for covering up the robot kibble. And my words, the colors are just to die for. The single greatest things on this figure are the plastic choices and the superb paintwork.
Pretty much the whole figure is painted, and despite that, the paint feels extremely durable and looks gorgeous. It all gleams with a pearlescent sheen, possibly due to small amounts of metal in it, or at least that's what I've heard. I can't verify that myself. Even the seats are painted. Literally the only unpainted parts on this figure, at least to my eyes, are the grey that the seats and the cab detail are mounted onto, and the translucent turquoise, which also looks stunning. Like, Jesus Christ, this is the highest class of paintwork.
There's something to be said about the layout of said paint as well, like they could have so easily made this thing as scrappy as the sides of Earthrise Ironhide in an effort to make the bot mode look more pristine, but surprisingly the layout works very well. It has a lovely sense of flow that moves from front to back, accentuated by the amazing mechanical sculpt work. Yes, mechanical, I'm a Transformers reviewer, not a Shmentai connoisseur. Also, I hate how I have to change that word due to demonetization. F you, YouTube.
Yeah, it could always be worse. You could always be at the whim of Twitch and the ever-growing air of darkness known as hell. So, basically Twitch times 2.
I'm also quite surprised how solid the vehicle mode is. You look at the bottom and at first glance, it seems like it's pretty flimsy, but everything surprisingly pegs in properly. RCs tend to have a lot of trouble with this. Take Rouge or the recent Earthrise C, for example. Pretty much every limb, though, pegs in, and they even manage to hide the head quite well. It's not something many will consider important, but I personally think it's pretty neat.
Even the box art is gorgeous.
Wait, we don't discuss box art on this channel.
Well, we do now! The art is nicely minimalist on the front, with nothing but a chest shot of the figure and lovely metallic pink name and product icon. Shame it's not embossed at all, but budgets are an issue and box art is not really something most companies consider a selling point. The aesthetic carries all the way around the box to the back, which is my only real issue with this. The back of the box is very cluttered in images of the figure in all kinds of different poses and positions, which is fine, but it brings in a lot of colours which really throw off the overall aesthetic. Too much blue for my eyes.
Some people just don't understand the finer things in existence.
I do love the car mode, but there are a few things here and there that I do find a smidge annoying. For starters, I really wish the heels pegged in somewhere. I get that they wanted the backpack to remain clean in robot mode, which makes sense given that's the mode they prioritized, but half the time they clash with the wheels, and the other they just cause clearance issues on the underside, which is a shame because thanks to the rubber tires, Nicee typically rolls very well, just a shame this sometimes negates that.
Another issue is weapon storage. In general, Nicee is pretty good with this. The gun plugs into the back of the parts forming shield, which we'll get to, and the bow forms the front of the car, but the sword just doesn't go anywhere. Are you saying they couldn't have found a way to fit this into the underside of the car mode? It's thin enough to fit if positioned right, but there's just no way to connect it.
It likely could have used a similar sword storage situation to Last Night / Studio Series Cogman if they had hollowed out the neck section a bit. However, given that such an engineering choice would have compromised the chest proportions, I doubt this company was, clear-headed enough to make such a decision. Also, the back is rather hollow, showing off the, rear end of the robot mode. God, I hate having used these euphemisms. It's not that I'm trying to be clean, I'm just trying to keep money on the table. Anyway, it's not terrible, but it's bad enough that it reminds me of the bonkers original Net anime, where anime girls randomly turn into electronics, yet somehow they still have their knickers on show. I would say, what the f***, Japan, but let's be real, this is par for the course. Especially considering the back is a parts-forming piece, they could have easily engineered a back panel here. Not the end of the world, but definitely disappointing. I've also heard complaints that the front of the vehicle mode looks rather, whatever the female version of phallic is. But honestly, I don't really see it. And if that particular thing bothers you, then considering the robot mode, this figure definitely isn't for you.
Despite all those flaws, however, I can safely say that the vehicle mode is absolutely brilliant, and those flaws are ultimately minor when considering the big picture. And oh boy, what a big picture it is. That aside, size-wise, she's most definitely masterpiece scale. If you're into having a leader class RC, she'll work, but in most cases she's made for an MP shelf. Well, I mean, not aesthetically, but definitely scale-wise.
And now, I shall use my dark powers to transform her instantly.
Wait, stop that! You don't actually want to see the transformation of your movie zombie Google to defeat the purpose!
It's not voodoo, it's eldritch power. But really?
Can't say I get it, but it is a thing.
Now, before we begin, it's worth noting that the included instruction sheet can be a bit hard to follow. There is a QR code that leads to a video of the transformation from the company themselves that is easy to follow, but the lacking instructions are still worth a mention.
Even putting that aside though, Nicee's transformation isn't that difficult. It's pretty easy to figure out even without instructions. Not to say you shouldn't have access to decent instructions to begin with, but it's pretty alright. Now the first thing you want to do is a little bit controversial. You want to pull this up a little bit, which will allow you to separate these joints, and it's already fallen out. This parts forming piece was pegged in there, and to the sides there. Now it is optional, you can leave that there, but it will be a controversial element that we will get to in due time. But anyway, the legs are tabbed in on the sides here, untabbed from there, untabbed from there. You can see the pegs on there. They lock in and rotate around along with that hinge joint. And then you can collapse them, just being careful to keep them in place. You want to bring the heels all the way out like so, and rotate them around to the front. With the feet aside, the legs are actually quite similar to Thrilling 30 RC in the way they fold around. It's just something I thought I'd mention. Also got tiny little panels here that if you so desire, you can move them up a little bit to cover that transformation joint there, or that hinge there. Not entirely necessary, but it's something you can do if you so desire. You want to take these side panels and untab them from there. It's tabbed in there with the slot there. Just move them out of the way so that you get a bit more space for the transformation. Come to the back here and untab that panel from there, which will allow you to fold that down. And then you've got a double hinge, one hinge there, one hinge in there, and they rotate down as well. The arms are pegged into the panel there, on that peg there. You just want to remove those from there. Take these triple hinges, one hinge there, and one hinge in the arm, although I guess the other hinges are ball joints, but it's just, well, technically 3 joints anyway. What I mean to say is you take it all out of there. Then you've got a double hinge in there that unhooks and rotates down a bit, as well as that whole hinge system in there. Now, if you were to line everything up exactly, it would be very difficult, so what you want to do is just line it up and get it in a generalized position. It lines up pretty easily. In theory, it would be bonkers, but in practice, it's fine, it's easy. Position the arms however you like. Clean up the backpack just a little bit, rotating the back parts here however you like. And last but not least, take the head and rotate it 180 degrees. Also, don't forget to turn in the wheels like I forgot to do, because I'm a idiot! Also, if you want to transform the shield that parts formed off, you rotate this a little bit, which allows you to pull it out. Then you turn it 180 degrees, peg it back in, rotate it to lock into place, and that allows you to move the spike backwards so that the shield pegs on properly there. Although it won't peg properly whilst the gun is still stored in there. You want to take that out, like so. Hello, gun. And one thing I want to mention, this parts forming is pretty minor, but people were concerned there would be much more. They were concerned the entire chest would be parts forming as well, but that is not the case. Not sure why people were concerned about that, but it was something that was brought up in conversation. But all that nonsense aside, it's a fairly enjoyable and simple transformation, and given how clean the robot mode is, even ignoring the backpack, which is fine, parts forming or no, yeah, it's clean, it's simple, it's fun. Not something I would have expected from this kind of design from a new company, but kudos. Pretty big kudos. Okay, so robot mode. It's a lot to take in. We all know what the designer's intent was.
I'm hungry!
Now, personally, the voluptuous nature wasn't what interested me. For me, what drew me to this quite decent design was the impeccable vehicle mode, which we discussed previously, the interesting use of back kibble, which is a definite step up from some of the competition, and the absolutely stunning paintwork, which thankfully is just as gorgeous as it was in the promotional material. Yeah, some people were concerned it would have a downgrade. Either way, my interest in this figure was somewhat unconventional, but I find there's enough here to justify my purchase.
Yes, sure you are. You're totally not horrible.
Is he gonna be okay?
Yeah, this happens all the time.
Meanwhile, my interest was almost the exact opposite. While I was definitely interested in the vehicle mode, I was much more taken with the robot mode. I have a somewhat unhealthy interest in action figures, specifically those styled after anime characters, and so I felt that Nicee would provide an interesting presence within my collection. It also caused the dual issue of bringing me back into Transformers, and oh look, now I have no money.
It's weird because this figure walks the line between traditional transforming action figure and Virginity Keeper, because from an engineering perspective there's a lot to like, but due to some design choices it falls short in a few areas. Getting it out of the way, I don't mind the chest design. It's goofy, but it's far from a unique thing on Transformers, even official ones. We mentioned several examples earlier, so it's easily ignored. I do feel the belly button is a bit creepy though. Might be a personal thing, but I feel it leaves some rather disturbing implications. But whatever, the mechanical detail on the rest of the body is lovely. Yes, again, mechanical detail, not fleshy detail.
The backpack is incredibly configurable. The front of the car, which normally forms the typical RT shoulder pylons, can either be left in the stock configuration or posed on some fairly unimpeded ball joint to get some more interesting looks. Personally, I like to fold them up so the headlights are pointing over the shoulders, giving the backpack somewhat of a butterfly-esque look. There's enough range here to get away with a lot of options. The lower coattails, if you will, are also on ball joint, giving them a good degree of option for you to craft your desired look, but these are somewhat more limited in their application.
Oddly enough, in spite of all the junk hanging on her back, she stands remarkably well. A lot of RCs have had stability issues in the past. I know for a fact that both versions of MMC Azalea have had said issues, and in my brief time with Earthrise not good enough to be Rat Trap's Aunt RC, I found it very difficult to get it in any action poses. Thank f*** I didn't buy that figure. If I had to take a guess why it's incredibly easy to stand her, I'd say it's a combination of a surprising amount of surface area on the bottom of her feet, in junction with a hefty amount of die cast in the legs. Most of the pistons and joints are metal, which not only adds to the structural integrity, but also ensures that most dynamic action poses are incredibly easy to pull off. For a first entry from a new third-party company, these are some really smart decisions.
She also comes with a lot of accessories, which isn't uncommon for a standard indecent figurine, but is rather rare for a third-party Transformer. For one, she has the aforementioned sword, which looks great, but I am worried it is going to shatter into a million pieces the moment she takes a shelf dive. This probably should have been made from a thicker plastic, but as long as you're careful, she will be fine.
The prototype actually showed her with a rapier instead. If the sword is this flimsy, I'd hate to see how bad the original design turned out.
She also comes with a pistol, which is sculpted well enough and looks good in hand. It does need to be disassembled to fit in the hand, but the connections are strong, and at least it doesn't slip out of her hand like the sword. Speaking of the hand, she comes with 3 extra sets, making 8 in total.
Oh, 7 for me. I lost one of them.
Ziploc bags. They're the future.
I know, the sword pierced mine, and one of them fell out and disappeared into oblivion, probably vacuumed up.
Ooh. Anyway, you get a good selection. You get 1 set of open hands, 1 set of trigger finger hands, 1 set of fists, and then also 1 slightly open hand as a sword holding hand. You can also get an adapter and an arrow for the bow, which you form from the front of the car, which can be removed from the back. It looks fine and all, but you do get the sneaking suspicion this wasn't done to add another weapon, but more so that the designers could make a part of the back removable parts forming to lead to a cleaner look without it seeming like it was unnecessary. At least the arrow doubles for a blast effect for the pistol, although the connection is a bit tight. May not have been intentional. And then there's the alternate chest. This is incredibly dumb. The point of this is that it's soft, so you can press down it, but it's off color from the default, so it doesn't look quite right on the figure, and it's also sculpted the exact same, so it's worthless in that department too. At least the swappable chest feature has been put to good use by fans to create some unique upgrade kits to turn Nicee into other characters. It's not really something to be considered when grading her, but it's still cool.
Unfortunately, the final accessory brings with it quite the controversy. See, most of the frustrations surrounding this figure don't pertain to the chest design and the proportions. Yes, it's voluptuous, but it's easily ignorable in multiple ways, being focused on the mechanical detail or outright not purchasing her to begin with. No, the main issue that I and many people have is the face. This is not RC. That in itself is fine, not everyone wants a traditional RC head sculpt, but this isn't how Big Firebird marketed it. From the get-go, this was to be a third-party RC figure, and now we get this. Granted, I do find the head sculpt works better in person than it did in pictures, but for f***'s sake, this is false advertising. If this was a traditionally legal company, this kind of bullshit would have started a lawsuit. Now, we don't really know why they chickened out and didn't include the original head sculpt, only going off a quote that claims, "You know why we had to do this." No, we don't. We can guess it was announced right after the Wayjane shutdown and they likely got scared, but come the f*** on. Such a response is scummy as shit.
On a personal level, I do like this head a whole bunch and was always intending to use it. However, what happened was seriously sus and could have been handled better. Hell, at a similar time to when this came out, Zeta Toys released Core Star under 01 Studios and managed to dodge this by including a distinctly Unicron features on Core Star as an upgrade box included in every purchase. Alternatively, they could do what TFC did with their upcoming G.I. Joe Megatron, censored the head in all promotional material, but in the end, this is what we have. And if I'm being honest, I can't say that I personally really dislike this head. Sure, it's not the traditional RC, but it's got all the design elements that are iconic to her. The rounded ears, the Romanesque head crest. Hell, the hair that frames her face is somewhat reminiscent of the pink detail on the Prime design. Again, I'm not saying this was all right, and I genuinely sympathize, but for me personally, it isn't a huge loss.
For me though, I feel the design looks a bit off. I can't put my finger on why, but something just bugs me. Maybe it's because the facial expression works better on the original RC design than this, but I still feel salty after all this time. But that's one thing. You want to know how they add more insult to injury? Take a look at this alternate shouting face. In photos, it looks like she's shouting. This is due to differences in lighting, though. Take a closer look at the mouth and you'll see... that's a tongue. This is that face. So they didn't include what they advertised, but they included this thing. Honestly, this has me kinda pissed, and if that wasn't bad enough, the face is completely removable on both versions, so they gave us 2 of the exact same head sculpt instead of just including the original helmet design. What the actual
Oh god, this face. Look, ignoring the obvious issues the good doc just pointed out, I have beef with this face for a couple of other reasons. For one, this is the only alternate face. If it was one of a few, this would be fine. I personally like my alternate faces shown show a wide range of emotions, especially ones that fit the persona of the character. Again, fine if there are more, but on its own it feels a bit pointless. I feel like I missed out on a better face that I would actually use to this. My second issue is a bit more risque. You see, if you ask me, if you are going to include something like this, then go all out on it. This is that face. That face you see plastered on t-shirts at conventions. Where are my peace sign hands to complete the look? The worst part is this is an easy fix. Scrap the redundant head and reuse that plastic for either more heads or other accessories to sell this one better. Hell, preferably both. This is not a traditional retail figure. Normal budget constraints are not as important as that of mainline figures.
Okay, pass me the MP36.
Oh yeah, sure thing.
Wait, what are you doing?
I've always wanted to try this.
I don't really care for this concept. I came for the engineering and paintwork, and for the fact that she was probably going to be one of the best RCs on the market. And now, she's not just not an RC, she's waifu bait. It's annoying, and people were right to cancel their pre-orders, don't get me wrong, such as ignorable, and there's a lot of love here anyway, but you do need to be aware of these issues going on. That said, the original 3D file is floating around on the internet somewhere, so you can replace it, provided you have access to a printer and semi-decent painting skills. There's also rumors that the upcoming Windblade figure will include the original head, but again, that just seems scummy. I get the potential reason, but for f***'s sake, don't chicken out.
Moving on to slightly less controversial issues, parts forming.
Isn't that more controversial within this fandom?
Shit. Yes, there is parts forming on this figure. The back of the vehicle mode detaches and becomes a shield. On one hand, this shield is at least a lot more cohesive than many other attempts to do this, and at least it becomes something. But on the other hand, this is just lazy. It's not like they couldn't have worked this into the backpack. There is enough junk there as is, but maybe that would have thrown off the figure's balance, and given how well she stands, that's probably a good call if so. But still, this could have been so much better engineered, especially considering her earlier pictures featured a rapier, a sword not traditionally paired with a shield. This reeks of laziness over genuine design.
Typically, I'd be a lot more critical of such things, but in this instance, I can be a little more lenient. For starters, the parts forming is actually optional. You are able to leave this panel on during transformation if you're careful enough, and it doesn't really mess with the articulation at all. Granted, the back kibble doesn't look great as a result, but even then, it's not to the same extent as Earthrise. I can't think of any more derogatory words towards this figure, so I give up RC. And even putting that aside, the figure gives a lot in terms of play value, so it's an ignorable flaw, even if ignoring it isn't easily done so. It's not like Double Dealer though, with shit that just hits you from every angle.
Stop, he's already dead.
There's a lot to like here, despite the parts forming disappointing head and excessive horniness.
Isn't that last one a positive?
Shut up.
Onto articulation, and there is a very sizable amount, being more comparable to that of an anime figure like a Figma or an SH figure up, although not quite to that degree. Special call out to the shifting hips that allow for an incredibly high kick, allowing her to pull off that pose that I assume came from TikTok because that change was terrible, and all terrible things come from TikTok.
In comparison to a traditional Transformer, it's a massive step above, especially with the joints in the chest. There are a lot of posing options available to you. Granted, it's probably so you can get her in some more suggestive poses, but either way, articulation is articulation. Anyway, size-wise, she's probably a bit taller than an RC would be in the Masterpiece scale, leaning more on the side of a traditional pre-Siege leader. In junction with the aesthetics, it doesn't really go with anything in your collection aside from any potential future figures from the company, but it doesn't need to. Nicee in herself is a novelty piece, so she works on her own.
I disagree. Typically, I put her next to Striker Manus, and they work surprisingly well together.
Can't say I see where you're coming from, but everyone's got a different collection. And that's the takeaway from all of this. If you like the way it looks, then there's enough engineering and polish to make you not regret this purchase. But if you find it repulsive, there's still a lot here to like, but I wouldn't tell you to go and buy it outright anyway.
Overall, I think it's a good figure with some questionable accessories, and I will always take that over a bad figure with good accessories. If you're massively into waifu figurines and Transformers, then this figure ticks both boxes. It's not necessarily for everyone, but it is for me.
And if it is the figure for you, why don't you purchase it from today's sponsor, Robotoys. Robotoys specializes in Hasbro, Takara, knockoffs, and third-party items, and they also have a large selection of exclusives to choose from. If you haven't already, don't forget to use the code DrLock 10% off at the checkout for 10% off a single order. I want to thank them for staying with this channel for so long, and you should definitely give them a try.
Anyway, I should probably get back to where I came from. That Hell Portal Form creator is leaking some seriously bad energies, and that is going to attract pit demons.
Yeah, I think one ruined the bathroom.
Yeah, you might want to watch that one. It's particularly troublesome in these coming months. Anywho, I should head. Don't open any more hell portals once I leave. The complaints department is already swamped.
Special thanks to Quartz Roolz for helping me out with this episode. Make sure to check him out on Twitch via the link in the description. It'll also be up on the screen, but unfortunately I don't think I can annotate it in any way because YouTube loves to keep you on their own website. Just a quick heads up, he is re-debuting on the 20th, so make sure to catch him then. I'm not quite sure what re-debuting entails. Hopefully it involves ice cream. I quite like ice cream. I've kind of become impartial to Ben & Jerry's lately. They used to be great, but recently it's kind of eh. I got this amazing one at Woolies recently. It was salted chocolate for some reason, salted chocolate fudge. It was a really weird but really amazing